Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Critical Bits Introduction to Actual Play Role-Playing Game Podcast. I'm Joel Ruiz. I'm the GM of Critical Bits.
I'm Paul Byron. I've heard Critical Bits before.
I'm Shannon Strucci. I'm also a host and player, as Paul is on Critical Bits.
Yes.
I'm Shelby Lee. Hi.
So we run Critical Bits. It's an actual play role-playing game podcast. We use the math system. All of us have played numerous other tabletop systems. And so we're here just to talk about, how to run an actual play podcast and the intros and basics of it. So thank you to everybody who came out. You got all those people.
We'll sweeten that later.
So real quick before we get started, all of the people out there, are there any questions that anyone has to start out with?
Or we should say a little bit about what we've done.
We
we have our own agenda here, so we can start with that.
But Joel, I've got a question for you.
What?
What is your experience with actual play tabletop podcasting?
Oh, my experience with actual play tabletop role-playing game podcasting.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. Your experience.
I am the GM of Critical Bits. I also...
Was that good?
Paul,
No.
Shut up and do the panel. How about you be on the panel?
I'm doing it now.
All right. Are you good?
Yeah, Joel's the GM, and he edits the podcast, and he handles social media for the podcast.
Yeah, and I also edit it and I guess produce, which is So I that's my experience. We've been running it for a little over a year now, and I've done that. We've done a few side series and
We've done guest runs on other podcasts.
Guest runs on other podcasts. Prior to this, I was just a fan of actual play podcasts, and finally decided to start one. But yeah, that's my experience with actual plays.
That was a good answer.
Paul, what is your experience with actual play podcasting?
Well, I've listened to some of them, and having found them wanting, I joined one.
My job is I'm a YouTuber. I do film reviews and stuff like that. I do a little bit of tabletop video stuff, but we both have a background in film stuff. They both have a background in stand-up comedy, and that kind of went. Y'all didn't mention that, but I think that
we were gonna get there.
I just play a lot of tabletop role-playing games. That's it. And then it's a pretty sweet deal for me because Joel does all the editing and producing and a lot of the social media and the
booking us at conventions.
Booking conventions,
hauling our gear around,
organizing things,
driving
and
us to
editing,
places.
a lot of the sound mixing, and I just play a tabletop role-playing game, and it's great. I like doing it. I like playing tabletop role-playing games. So
yeah.
I'm gonna say the full tabletop role-playing game.
We launched in November.
Yeah, we did.
November 20th of 2018 was when our first episode went up. So we're a little over a year in. We're right under 100,000 downloads with 33 33 episodes out on the public feed, 1 6-episode bonus miniseries, and then a special bonus episode called Spider Day that has 33, I think it's 32 or 33 different PCs fighting and dying against a giant spider.
Yeah, as you do.
So that's what we've done in the first little bit. It is a little ambitious for an actual play podcast to have not. This sounds bragging, a little is, but to have done as much as we have in the first year. But like Shannon pointed out, both of us have a very extensive background in production, video production, and producing and writing scripts, and so we both of us were lucky enough to have a lot of skills that led to us being able to do the podcast. So Shannon and I originally were the ones, the first two that wanted to, I approached Shannon just being I want to make an actual play. Are you interested? And then we through trying to just look around, found Paul and Shelby, which was a very good pairing.
I was the fourth choice, but I'm happy to be a part.
Yeah.
I think I was the fifth.
Well,
yeah, I think you were before me.
that means I'm better than you.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fucked up. I mean,
You were
that's terrible.
before him.
I was before Paul? Oh, yes. Okay, so I am better than Paul.
Yeah.
Everyone knew that already.
I think a good jumping off point though is kind of the conversation based around wanting to start one, because obviously you're going to be into tabletop role playing game, but you need to have a conversation as a group of first of all, what game do you want to run? What kind of style of story do you want to tell? There's a producer named Taylor who produces the Rude Tales podcast.
Rude Tales of Magic, Fun City Adventures.
I heard a clip. He also produces a podcast called Fun City Ventures, And so there was a Patreon exclusive clip that they played a small clip of where he was talking about like he views all of his as narrative play podcasts opposed to actual play, which is I wanted to credit him because it's a term he has like kind of coined that I really like because I think for us we really focused on it being a narrative play because we record the whole thing in person and then I edit it down pretty heavily. We cut down crosstalk, like any extra rules talk that isn't needed, any dice rolls, and then we add in sound effects. We add in like background music,
voice effects.
But there is, there's a very large spectrum that you can do of like, because some people want to just record their game, like slap a couple like equalizing filters and just put it out completely raw, kind of cut, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I really do think that's like one of the big first steps is like, what system you want to run, what kind of story you want to tell, and then also just like what level of production are you trying to hit?
Yeah. Like kind of like a session zero for like actual like what you want your podcast if you want to do a podcast, which I guess is what this is about. and
I think for anyone that's actually trying to get into it, if you do not have years of background productions or knowledge to like how to do this, don't stress yourself out over it. If you want to just start at the basic level of it and just start putting it out, do it if you want to. And then just, in my opinion, if you're going to be, even as hobbies, you're doing creative things, you always want to get better as you go. So if you try to start off with what you can manageably do and not like just overwork yourself or stress yourself out, like just as time, just build up. Like be like, all right, well my sound quality isn't that great, so just work on getting that better. And then once you got that down, just be like, all right, well now let me, like for me as a GM, I will edit my show and then I hear how many times I say and stuff like and well actually and then now I consciously when I'm running the game will like be like, no, slow down. Stop screaming things. So I do think that's it. Like you just kind of figure out what level of quality and production and story you're trying to get for, and just go with what's manageable, and then kind of build your way up.
And also, like, if you don't mind sharing, which you don't have to if you don't want to, but like, what is your like experience, or what is your interest, or is there any like questions that you have, or any like things that you want us to focus on? Because otherwise, we could just like dick around and talk.
The question I had, because I've never really done anything in terms of digital or stream production, but I've been running D&D tables for years, all the way back to when I was 12, 13 years old. And I've always written my own stuff in terms of content, so I'm fairly comfortable with that side of it, but I have no understanding of the production side of it and what the variables are in terms of what is the style of equipment that tends to be preferable or necessary, and how far do you need to push that slider of investment of what are the essentials, what are the kind of low-hanging fruit pickups where you can skip past the essentials and get a handful of extras that really make a big difference.
Right.
And then what are the extra pieces beyond that where you can get away without this until later on down the road. And the similar question for the video side of production and the editing side and sound quality. And, does that make sense in terms of how far do you push that envelope? Where are the stages of it?
That's the thing.
So the question is more of as someone who's had a lot of tabletop experience, the actual podcasting and technical side.
Yeah, or streaming.
Sure.
Well, a lot of what's important, especially if you don't have a lot of money, is sort of like if there's a dog barking, or if there's background noise, or if someone's talking, or if the fridge is on. It's like little things that don't cost you any money to just be aware of your environment and stop recording, or like turn
the AC off, turn the ceiling fans off in the room if you're inside. We record in my living room or in my dining room. Turning off the AC, turning off the fans, putting the dogs outside. It's that like those things.
And have an individual mic for everyone. It could be a $50 microphone. We use the MXLs, which are like $60. I used to use an H1 recorder for my YouTube series. Like, get individual. Don't put a snowball in the middle of the table.
And certainly don't put an iPhone in the middle of the table. No, this is 100% a thing people do, and it shows.
That is one thing where it's like, if I listen to something, it is like, if the sound quality isn't good, it is like absolutely unlistenable or unwatchable to me. So I definitely think that microphones and like sound quality is a good investment. So like doing research there, and
they don't have to be super expensive. Like I said, you could get a $50 to $100 microphone per person, which isn't super cheap, but you don't need to buy like a $600. There's no reason at all.
Yeah, like a $10 pop filter makes a mic sound $50.
And if you set it up properly, and then you use Audition or Audacity and run like filters on it,
So one of the great things right now about trying to get into any kind of like, there is like the money barrier, but there is so much accessibility and tutorials and stuff like that on YouTube where literally you can, if you're looking up different microphones that would match your price point and want to know which ones are best, just type in which brand you're looking at and then be like, blank versus blank versus blank. And I guarantee you there's 5 videos of somebody who is like broken down what each mic gives you, what's their weak points, what's that. And then just kind of, watch as many of those as you can. And like you're saying, you can get lower price point stuff, like dynamic. These are all dynamic mics. They can be a bit more expensive. You can get a bit easier sound off of them because they don't have as much crossover and bleed. And then there's condenser mics, which is what we use, where you can get really good sound quality, but they have pretty bad bleed over. And so I bought those for us, though, because I knew as an editor I can cut out all that. And so it does take a few extra steps. But like I said, it's like kind of a trade-off. Like we got, in my opinion, higher quality for a lower cost point, which was nice. But I really do think, like, like you're saying, just kind of, and in my opinion, and it's fine.
What are you about to say?
This is our panel about we get to have opinions.
This is my personal preference, and I'm not bad-mouthing anybody who uses this setup or like chooses to do a podcast like that. But like you're saying, like a Yeti mic in the middle of the table, like an iPhone. If that's all you have, in my opinion, don't put it out as a podcast. Like
play with the game with your friends.
Yeah, play the game with your friends.
Or record it to learn how to edit.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what I was about to say. Use that as a workshop. Like find like a 5th edition book, like an adventure book or whatever game you want to play, and you record yourselves playing that and play it, and then teach yourself how to edit, do small tricks like that. Because like it's just, like Shelby was saying, like if you listen to something and it's got like really bad audio quality, like it sounds like everybody's talking like this, like like that is nobody's gonna listen to your podcast, and it's fine because some people do just want to make it so like their 5 friends can listen to it. If that's all you want, that is cool. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like the scale of like quality. But then there's people that we've interacted with a lot of people on like podcasting Twitter that are just like, oh, I'm really upset that no one likes my show and I can't get the reach out there and blah blah blah. It's like, well, you're not really putting the effort in to improve things enough to actually grow your show past you and your 5 friends enjoying it. Yeah. And so it's like I said, like if you just want you and 5 friends to enjoy it, that's fine. But if you're expecting to get any kind of audience, like you have to be respectful of like people are trying to listen.
Well, I mean,
to this.
I think this comes to like this is a thing that like some of the actual play community has a mildly ongoing debate about, like what is the focus of your actual play podcast?
I was just
is the enjoyment of the players or the audience? At which point, why is it a podcast if it's not number 2? But that is, again, these are personal opinions, and other people are entitled to theirs, however wrong they may be.
I'm a really big fan of Matt Colville, and he and Matt Mercer are friends, and they were going back and forth on Twitter just talking about, well, I care about my players. What's important is my players and their game. And it's like, I get that. That's cool.
And as a GM, that's an awesome approach.
Yeah, but we're like, when we play the game, we have fun playing it with each other, and we get very emotionally invested. But it's like, this is for people to listen to. I have other games I'm in they're just for me that will never be recorded. Yeah, that's mine. But with this, it's like when we were first planning out doing this, I like insist, and you were on board with it. But I was like, you have to put sound effects in. You have to put music. This has to be cut like a radio play or like a TV show. This is a story. This is not 4 friends sit around and play games together. It's not like, and there's different ways to do it. But I for one, that made me more comfortable as like people aren't going to think I'm their friend because they listen to it, because that creeps me out. But
and again, there is a role for shows like that. Some people do want that. Like if you can't
that's the critical role opening thing. They say your nerdy best friends who are right there beside you, and I'm like, no. I mean, Matt Mercer's a wonderful GM. They're all very talented. Yeah. But for me, it's like, no, we are making a story. Yeah. As a collaborative storytelling. It's like a production versus like we're just going to put a camera on us playing a game, which I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, I definitely think people see like, hey, like this is the effort that you put into it.
And people make comments about our show or similar shows.
Yeah, and it's I do think that it is a little bit of a transition from, because like you were saying that you have experience like running games for people, but then like transitioning from like, hey, this is just for my friends, this is just for players, to I want to create something that other people will want to watch. Yeah.
And I think go back to what I was saying though, like the idea of like, if you can only start out with a really basic setup, and you want to like, if you don't know how to edit yet or things like that, it's a good way to teach yourself. But also, this is the thing that I've seen some podcasts like run into as a problem is they go for a few years or seasons, however they want to break down their thing, and then like they'll be like, yeah, so it's all a continuous story, and then we didn't get better mics until season 2, so kind of bear with it till episode 36, and then kind of go. But in my opinion, it kind of goes back to the other thing where it's just like,
we're only at episode 33, so thanks for bearing with us.
What's really hard to try to tell somebody like, well, those first 36 episodes do matter, but after that we get really good. Where it's like, well, if you did a thing where you just wrote a 6 to 10 session story that's like start to finish, and if you do want to put that out while you're learning how to edit, while you're even seeing if you want to put enough money in to make this good, you can just tell people like, oh yeah, the first 10 episodes, it's a completely standalone thing. I literally taught myself how to edit as I was doing that and learned a lot of stuff, and then realized, okay, yes, we all want to do this. So then we all pulled together $400 to buy some mics and stuff like and stuff. And that's what, because like I said, not to name any, I just have plenty of friends that I've made that they're just like, yeah, I kind of wish that whenever we got better mics that I would have just wrapped up the story we were on and made a whole other show, so I can just tell people like, you know, season 2 is a whole other thing. Start there. If you really like us as like content creators, go back to our backlog, which isn't sounding as great. And it's just because it's a hard thing to ask somebody to be like, bear with me for, I think you can get away with 1 or 2 episodes, but like,
what? Hey, come with me. I'm Sisyphus pushing the rock up the learning curve.
But he also asked about video stuff. What would you recommend for streaming? And
so for streaming stuff, that's
cameras.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, for streaming stuff, it's actually I think the barrier on the audio quality you can get away with a little less, and you can get some really good. It's the same thing what I was saying with the mics. You can get some really good HD webcams for anywhere from like 30 to 60, maybe a little more. If you're really deal searching, it might be more, but like you can get some really good stuff. They have a lot of really basic programs now that will like, even if you don't have a green screen, it will just kind of like kind of measure out your background and blur it for you, so you can like, if you don't want your room to be seen.
It turns out the expansion of the surveillance state and automated weaponry has really improved consumer access to cameras.
Saying, like,
No, it really has. It's a very scary
cameras
truth.
And like TV and photography and stuff has gotten way cheaper for consumers. Everything else has gotten expensive. So you can't have
rent isn't cheaper.
Yeah, you
cameras
can't have
are cheaper.
health insurance or stable rent, but you can get a really sweet HD camera.
This
Like this is a
shoots
supercomputer.
Yeah.
It's 4K.
Yeah.
You there? Yes, sir.
I was, and then to the question that the other gentleman was asking earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
While we're on the subject of cameras and backgrounds, it sounds like your group, and I haven't listened to a whole lot of your stuff or watched it, although I intend to now. It sounds like a hoot.
It's a splendid show.
What sort of consideration do you all give to set design and overcoming the limitations there? Because not everybody, of course, has an AV studio in the basement.
That's what I was talking about for like a lot of the programs. I'm trying to remember what they're called. I bought a bunch. Looking like following stuff like Humble Bundle. They do a lot of stuff because I bought like a streaming package on there that gave me like a bunch of stuff where it's like, oh, here's like royalty-free music you can stream on your Twitch channel. And like I said, I can't remember the program, but there is like just a program. I don't have a green screen backdrop or anything, but I can set it to where it will key out my background, and to where it is kind of like, okay, well, this is the outline of your body. Because if you ever watch this to people's screens, it's like, why does the outline of them look weirdly soft? And like, I'm not trying to like it's a crappy program, but it's just basic keying, and you really can just like, you can get programs, and I'm assuming this is just like a quick guess. Like I got a humble bundle where it's like $20 for a bunch of stuff. I'm assuming you can probably just for like $20 to $30, probably even less, find programs to do this to where it's a really basic thing. And I also think too, for the biggest thing for streaming, you don't necessarily have to have a cool background in your physical camera area, but just put a little bit of time into making your overlay for your Twitch or whatever thing you're going to use.
Put everyone's information up. I've been looking at streams because when we want to recruit people for stuff we do, and no one's Twitter handle, no one's information will be on it. They want it's like, this is Jerry. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, well I can't access any of these
I'll look
people.
them up in the phone book. That's a
yeah,
thing,
like I don't
right?
know. It's like when you do it, it's like so and so at this, they're playing this character. It's like okay, because you can glance at it and see all the information you need. It's laid out clean.
And then once again, this falls another thing. Like Shannon and I, we were lucky. We've had a lot of experience using the whole Adobe suite for work for years. So like I know how to use Photoshop and I can make them myself. But I literally just went and looked at a bunch of different streams and watched people's setups and be like, okay, well I like that. I like this. I wish this information was in there, and I've done that. But once again, like I know this is a price word thing. If you don't have any kind of program like that, there are websites like Fiverr and other things where you can go and just be like, hey, here's the information I need. I need to be able to put 6 cameras on. Like, give me an overlay, and you can get them relatively cheap. But it's just
But pay them well because they don't make it up. Yeah.
well, yeah, Fiverr is it's whole.
It's a
other
deeply
thing.
exploitive gig economy.
That's what I was like, I
Well, that's
built
what I'm
up
saying.
again.
But there's, I mean, there's plenty of people that you can just like commission directly. There's ways around it, but
Or for like character art to promote
Yeah.
your show. We've done a lot of commissions of people.
Yeah, we've
I
done
did a commission today.
yeah, we've done a lot of that. But I think streaming, you can get away with having like a lot less, because also too streaming, people are knowing that you're watching everything live, so it doesn't have to, like, if it's not super tight, it's because people are thinking in real time, like the way, like I said, we record and edit our thing. Like when I'll be because it's a Powered by the Apocalypse game, so I'm like, all right, you get a full success, you get to pick 3 options off of that chart. To the listeners, all 3 of you are like, this. I know it
Yeah,
immediately.
we're really
Take this
fast.
so long.
And then to us, they're like, all right, so which page is that
what is
on,
that
and
one?
how
How
I
many
get
do I
3
get
or
down?
2, and like all that stuff we cut out. So like on the podcast itself, we sound sharp and fast, except for how many times we call ourselves out. But streaming, it is, you're seeing it warts and all, and so I think that a lot of people will give. And I will give streaming a little bit more of like less judgmental.
No, you always give live leeway.
Yeah.
I mean, like you just can't demand the same things as live.
That's why
And
SNL's still around. It doesn't have standards,
well,
but it's live.
I think that's just because Lauren Michaels has really a lot of dirt on somebody, including me. Sorry, Lauren.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of, and even like there's free like editing. Like I feel like GIMP is like that software is really easy to just learn stuff.
And
if you
Audacity,
don't wanna-
the
Yeah,
audio.
Audacity is great.
Audacity
like
is a free one for
recording
audio. I know a lot of people
OBS
that use
is
that.
free, right?
Yeah, there's OBS is a streaming software that's free. I'm not a big fan of their most recent updates. But
People watching this video can just open another tab and Google these words, and
Google
sure you'll
these
find some
words.
stuff.
But I think those are kind of that. I know that a lot of people. I know going back to like the microphone question. For streaming, even if you just got like a gamer headset that just has its own thing, you definitely you never want to have people where your audio is going through your webcam and you're not wearing headphones.
God,
Because
yeah.
I've had people do that when we're recording, and then later I go back and I'm like, oh, cool. So when you're not talking, everyone is talking back, and so it was
People don't mean to do it.
it was
It just happens.
infuriating, and I hated
It's
it.
bad.
But that's the thing. Like just like even just a basic like go follow Game Deals whatever, and just find like a $50 Xbox Live headset with the little mic on it. It's gonna sound better than your webcam.
No, I mean I worked in a call center for a long time, and we would use this like a $500 Jabra Bluetooth headsets, but we ended up stopping using that because the parts became obsolete and they stopped working so fast. But we swapped over to like $80, $100 gaming headsets. Perfectly, it's fine. It's exactly the same. And I mean, so like the quality in those microphones is not so drastic that you're actually getting that much more for your $500 to $600 for your professional enterprise models as you are for your like standard gaming headsets. These again, the pervasiveness of the surveillance state has made a lot of this more available for us. So and like, so just that gaming headset is largely enough, right?
Yeah. And this is so this goes back to the thing you're talking about. Try to get everyone on a separate channel when you're recording. So we all do record in person. And then before this, so right now this is the thing that we record our podcast on.
What is that called?
So this is the Zoom Live Track LA. This is a higher price point, is around like $400. We've been gracious. We have Patreon fans. We've been able to buy this. Prior to this, we use a Zoom H6, which is still around $300 to $400. And there's lots of different options of stuff that you can get. But one convenient thing about if you're doing all online is that everybody can record themselves locally, and you can have individual tracks. I think I think it can be a bit easier to have multiple tracks if everyone's online, so you don't have to have one multi-track recorder in person. I like playing in person better just because it lets you react to other people. But the biggest thing about having multiple tracks and multiple channels is you can mute people. And I'm not saying like, oh, no one wants to hear Paul, we're gonna cut him out. But
No, they don't.
But it literally is. It's just
talking about that.
you know, if we're all in the same room and Paul coughs while Shannon's talking, it's kind of hard to take that out of levels. If Paul's in his own room and he coughs, I'm like, cool, just take that out, and it can make editing so much easier. We had some questions sent in from fans on our Discord and our Twitter, but we had a friend of the show, Tori. They were asking us about like how to make editing not eat up all of your time, and it's hello. Oh, I have no clue about the games for the Switch. That's not an forte, but
unfortunately, we're in charge of so little here.
Yeah,
very slow.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I know I'm wearing a tie, and that is an indication of being in charge of things, but it's just not the case.
I call you and ask you where stuff is in my house all the time. No, so but back to the question, like how to make it where you're just not overwhelmed by the editing, especially whenever you're coming into it brand new. I think you just kind of got to focus on your problem areas and kind of like work your way up towards that. There are the same thing we're talking about. You can YouTube. So like if you're like, oh, there's a lot of echo on this mic. How do I fix this? Just Google. Take out Echo Audacity. Take out Echo
Audition.
Blank Program.
Yeah.
And like I said, once again, 30 people are going to tell you how to do it. You can find different ways. And especially, too, if you're recording with the same setup or the same people that have the same setup, you can just be like, all right, well, Shelby always has a little bit of a buzz in the background of her mic at her house. So I'm going to definitely I have this filter ready to like cancel out that.
That's actually just a sound Shelby's brain makes.
Yeah.
Never stop.
And so it's just a thing where like it seems hard at first because you literally have to find out your problem areas. But for us with our podcasting, especially when it's just the four of us recording, I have a preset thing of filters that I have made for each of the four of us. I get very loud. Shelby gets very loud. Shannon is a bit too quiet. And so it's just you just kind of have to learn.
And I'm just muted on all.
Yeah. And Paul, I ADR all of his lines.
No, so I've actually never recorded with these guys. My stuff is all recorded separately.
But I do think it's just like a slow learning process. And also give yourself some time. If you're going to start a brand new podcast and you've never edited before, you should get a backlog. Because first of all, even if you have edited before, if you can get a backlog on a project where you're not like up against the wire.
We're like a month and a half
every
ahead
release
right now.
Oh my God. I've done so many projects really nice. Where I'm like, literally people are like, oh, I like the thing that you did. What are you doing next? I'm like, rushing.
Episode 7 right now.
And so let yourself get a backlog because you can slowly learn how to edit. You can slowly like fix any problems you have, and then you can even like say if you like are editing 6 episodes and by the time you get to episode 6 you're like, oh my God, this is a thing that I could have done for all the first couple episodes.
You can go back.
Just go back and redo it and just kind of allow yourself time, because the thing is, I think a lot of people really want to rush to just have a project out.
Yeah.
But I think if you give but releasing it today opposed to releasing it for 2 months from now, especially if you don't have any kind of name attached to it, means nothing. There's no difference. But if you release it today and it's not the best you can make it, but if you release it in 2 months from now and it's polished as hell, 2 months from now is better. 2 months from now, people will give a shit about your show and give it a chance.
And one thing I wanted to say, like I said, I do YouTube. I've been doing it for 5 years. And when I started, I was really bad about comparing myself to people I was a fan of, being like, why aren't I? It wasn't even necessarily about views, but it's like, oh my God, this is so good. What am I? It's like, oh, they've been doing this for 10 years. And I'm like, why? I used to record my audio on my phone because I couldn't afford a microphone, which worked. But it's also like, you start looking at people and you get frustrated because you're not as popular, not as good enough. I think a lot of people have that problem and they quit. But it's like, no, you're not looking at the 10 years this person, shot wedding videos to make all their money and slowly built up a following or slowly learn how to edit. It's not necessarily, like, you can also just pay somebody to edit it.
Ira Glass talks about this as the disparity between your very good and advanced tastes and your very low talent level.
There's like the graph.
I like really good stuff and I can't do it, but because I'm not as good as them. But if I, again, spend 10 years doing it, you can be. Yeah.
There's a Doc Hammer thing he said too, was like, when I say that I suck, I mean, I know I can do better. Don't feel bad for me. I'm going to apologize for this with my next work. Like, I'm not,
Yeah, because we like I said, we have a good sized fan base, and we've made other friends, and we've gotten compliments on like, oh, y'all's audio quality was good from episode 1, and y'all have like gotten better and things. But I keep telling people, because I had some people be like, oh, I would love to run a podcast, this wouldn't do as good as y'all. I'm like, cool. for 10 years, I've been poor. I busted my ass. I made a lot of really bad content, and whether it be quality,
It's like, how many sketch films did you do? Like,
Yeah,
how many?
like-
You did stand up for 10 years.
Yeah,
It's like that's all the stuff that's going
I did stand
into
up
it.
for like around a decade. I have like either shot, produced, edited, or helped on with over 100 shorts because I ran a comedy show for 3 years where me and 2 friends produced 3 short films a month. I booked and like managed stand-up shows. I made a few shitty web series because I'm talking about. I literally taught myself how to edit 100%. I bought a camera, made some really fucking poor stuff, and I've now since taken it down off the internet. But I don't. I've watched it again and be like, this is terrible. But the thing was talking about, Doc Hammer saying like I suck. Like I was like, oh, I suck. But this is literally the first thing I've ever done, and I can now rewatch all of this and be like, cool. Let me find all the problems that I made, and let's learn from that. And so I think that's the biggest thing is just like you gotta allow you're gonna stuck. Everyone sucks at stuff when
We're
they start.
saying that so you don't get disheartened.
Yeah.
It's just I think there have been people we've been friends with who had a really good podcast that just sort of didn't do enough numbers and they quit. It's like, but it's odd that unless you're really lucky or you have people going in who already have an established fan base, it's just a lot of work. But if you it's like you have to find a way to enjoy the process and keep building it because I think it's worth it. I enjoy doing it,
Yes.
Sir in the
Yes,
back.
yes,
you
you the
there.
third person who has a question.
The other 2 guys, they were asking a lot of questions. But suppose, after all of the production is done, or you're established to a certain extent, or flash forward 18 months where you're accumulated some experience on
Sure, let's say you're giving a panel at a convention. That stage.
How do you promote once you're at a point where you're comfortably in your stride to start trying to expand that fan base once you're there and you're producing a quality product?
Well, you can make zines, and you can leave them around at a convention.
Yeah.
Your friend can make I'm really active on Twitter, and I have a following for my YouTube videos. It's like.
So we suggest starting with someone that already has a following on your show.
Yeah,
that is a very
Hopefully more
convenient,
than
awesome
one,
thing for our.
But if you only know one, then that's fine too. But I mean, we took fan art and put it into little zines that we made, and I mean this does cost money and time and stickers and that sort of thing. And then online we have collaborated with a lot of other podcasts. We've done charity stream events, like really had a lot of different people on. It's just finding people you like working with and working with them. And it's just a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, this kind of pertains to also to piggyback we had a question on our Curious Cat. Any advice for early marketing? Basically, get anyone besides your friends to listen. So this is
my friends don't listen.
This is one thing I'm going to go and tell you what not to do. Because I will say this, like or at least the actual play podcasting community. We're not necessarily involved with the full Twitter podcast community, but
I'm on
Shannon is on Struggles Testing. But so there's a thing in Twitter called Follow Friday, and people.
Oh my God, I hate Follow Friday.
People will just be like, okay, so I just started a podcast. I'm gonna go follow everybody that does a similar podcast to me, and then on Friday, I'm gonna tag 30 accounts, boom, 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 all of them, and then people will some people will follow you back. It's like a follow for a follow. That is not an organic reach. And also, if you tag us, the podcast, Critical Bits, one of those, I unfollow and mute your account. 100%. I'm looking at this camera. If you've ever tagged me as Critical Bitcast on one of those, I have muted your account. I will never interact with you. But what I did do, and I will say this, I did that a few times when we first started and then realized, like, oh, this isn't good.
People hate it.
So what I did is because I wanted to start getting out there, I would go, instead of just following the podcast, I would go listen to the first couple episodes.
You found some really good shows.
And then actually, like, tweet out, be like, hey, this is like, so like, we befriended a podcast called like Head to Table, who has guested on our show, and I've made good internet acquaintances with the two of them. But literally, it's just because I was like, all right, let me check out this show, and I was like, oh, this is really good, and so I listened like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then made at least one tweet about what I liked about each of those episodes to engage.
Wait, so a genuine compliment about something you actually know about the thing is a good way? I'm confused.
That's the way I think is the best way to do it, because then you'll get other creators, and like, yes, it is a little bit of like, hey, listen to yours, listen to mine.
Yes, it's tiring to have a genuine interest in things. I know.
But it is a thing, like we've made friends. Like we were just on we did like a guest episode on
Talking about Omen.
We're talking about Ballad of the Seven Dice.
Because my zine.
Yeah, so like we were at Gen Con. I went to Gen Con. We had the zines that Shannon put together, and I just gave them around to a bunch of people. And then the GM, Lucas, found our zine and a pile of business cards, and so it stood out. And then actually listened to our show, and then reached out. I was like, "Oh, I love the show. I love what you do." I started listening to his show. I'm a huge fan of it. We've now guests on his stuff, and so it really is just like the zines are really helpful, but just like honest, organic interactions. And also, don't lie to people. If you listen to someone's podcast and you don't like it, don't tweet at them your podcast sucks, because that's rude. And
just don't listen to it. Like everything else you don't like.
Stop listening to it and don't tweet at them. But like when you actually find other people you like, tweet at them, engage with them, because that's how you're going to start doing that. Because the biggest thing with most media, but especially podcasting, it's word of mouth. That is, and that's the hardest part about it, is the marketing is like, well, hope you're good enough for somebody to tell their friend. Because if any of the four of us be like, you should listen to the podcast Critical Bits, and you're like, why? It's like, because I'm on it. You're going to be like, cool, I'm not going to, because you're on it. Of course you would say that. But if someone's like, oh, check out this podcast, Battle of the Seven Dice, they're like, are you on? I'm like, no, a friend of mine runs it, but it's just it's one of my favorite shows. It's got a bunch of great body horror and like melodramatic D&D. You're going to listen to that way more than listen to my show. It really is.
Oh, is that supposed to be melodramatic? I definitely went goofy.
Well, their main show is like melodramatic action. Shout out to Battles of the Seven Dice. Go check them out on Twitter. But like I said, we've like made friends with a podcast called Omencast, and it's also fun too, because like you know, Battle of the Seven Dice, most of them are based in Canada. Omen has like their cast is from all over. There's like London, Swedish, like Texas, and so it's just a cool way to meet people, and just as you're just reaching out, I think that's the biggest thing. And then just kind of not open accessibility, but just accessibility. Like make yourself fun to like come on as a guest, do live streams. If you're trying to get like if you're trying to figure out who you want to guest, just be like, cool, let's just run a couple games. Let's just throw people out there.
And I think too, if you imagine like Matt Mercer or like the McElroys or whatever, like the big celebrities of actual play podcasting, like how many people are like, please come on my show, please. It's like don't just try to get the most famous person you can who doesn't know you and who isn't a good fit. They know what you're doing. It's just ladder climbing. It's gross. It's weird. But if like you kind of make friends with people, or they're people who are on like a similar level of visibility as you can like come up together. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have friends who had a bigger following who come on our show. And like one of my, like our friend Branson Ruiz, who just started Rude Tales of Magic, which is like it's a really, really good, really, really funny D&D podcast. It's like, but I knew him, and I just like shot him a DM instead of just like I said, like trying to get the McElroys on or something, which is they probably would not.
I'm sorry, no, please. This actually, speaking of Ballad of Seven Dice, right? They run a melodrama. We run comedy. There's a couple of directions to go in terms of what your actual content looks like, and the question of, do I want to do a rules-driven podcast? Do I want to? I mean, rules-driven play, because some people really, really enjoy that, like in gritty D&D, like encumbrance and ammo and rations and math. And like, do people want to listen to that? I don't. But a lot of
that is the one.
A lot of people do. I can't stop them from liking things.
The one major complaint we've gotten from a couple people about our show, it's like, it's really funny and I like the characters and stuff, but you don't follow the rules good enough. And it's like, well, I mean, for real, like that's if they want to listen to people play Powered by the Apocalypse, that is their prerogative. And there are other shows that are better suited for that.
However, there's also the philosophy of, if you're having a good time, you're playing the game correctly.
Yeah, like I said, our podcast is definitely narrative and story first, like
I think narrative play is a substantially better thing to call it than actual play. Just in terms of our show.
Shout out to Taylor for that term.
Thank you.
But like also like sometimes like I want to like listen to a show to learn how to play the game. Like I've like
do not come to us for that.
I've like looked at it, I'm like, oh, I want to know how to play Blades in the Dark. Let me find a Blades in the Dark podcast. This is not. I don't think that Critical Bits is a great way to learn how to play Mask.
Anything.
It's really not.
If you want to learn how to actually play the game of Mask by the rules, don't listen to us. If you want to learn how to have a really good like open-ended, like character-focused narrative, just
Protean City. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Protean City is a very good show, but they are a good show, and they have really good. They focus on story a lot, but also they understand how to play Mask.
So
But
yeah,
like
if
I
you
said-
want the whole
but
package,
also,
listen to them.
like one of their players / GMs, Brandon Leon Gambetta, he's guested on our show. He knows 100% how to play the game to a
And
T.
he schooled us on it. He ruined our
He's
lives.
literally
Yeah,
writing
he
an
beat us
RPG for
at the
Magpie
game.
Games right now who publishes Mask.
Magpie Games is who publishes Mask. Brandon is currently, they have an
Kickstarting.
estimate out of Passion de los Passions. It's about to kickstart. I can never fucking say
That
it.
It's a telenovela game.
It's
It's a lot of fun. Go check
Brandon
it
knows
out.
how to play it and knows that we play the game wrong and still tells me, he's like, I love your show. He's like, it's great because y'all are doing your own thing. And I think that's kind of goes back to the thing I said in the beginning. Like, when y'all sit down and have the conversation as a group, like, you need to, like, what's going to be our focus? Is it going to be rules lowering? Is it going to be to a T? Is it going to be open? Is it going to, there's some people that will just do like a hack system. They're like, we're doing D&D, but it's steampunk because I didn't like any of the steampunk games out there, and we're changing the rules and the flavor text of that. And so I really do think that it's, it's really, it kind of goes back to that first thing.
Well, and it changes. I mean, I think that your desire as a storytelling for what your storytelling is depends a lot on, again, on how you're going to build characters and how you're going to build your world, right? Because if you're doing a high drama, sort of melodramatic or high fantasy that you want to take very seriously, you kind of want to min-max your characters so you do well. Meanwhile, we fail all the time, and it creates some of the best moments in the show when we roll really low and have to compensate for our failures.
Yeah.
And that has created some of the most memorable and interesting parts of the show. So I think that there is something to be said for like opening yourself up for that opportunity and giving yourself character creation and sort of story creation where you can say, no, this character is bad at this, and I'm going to make him do it.
It's like the three of us, we have play styles where I really enjoy leaning into failure. I really enjoy like a character who's like playing a coward or playing someone who's physically not strong but has this ability. I do that in D&D when we play it casually. I just think it's more fun. I don't play role-playing games as a power fantasy or like a big heroic journey or whatever. Some people do. That's also valid, whatever. I think, like you said, we're on a comedy podcast. It's funny when people fail.
Yeah.
But that's also the thing where it's like, I remember when we started the podcast, we like all sat down to dinner together and we like had a drink and we said like, hey, what system do we want to play? Like, what do we want to do? Who are you thinking about playing? What playbooks are we looking at? Like, kind of where do we want to be? And a lot of it did come out in like, hey, when we ran the first session, we were figuring out a lot about what it was going to be. But it's important to have that set up as far as like, hey, like, what do I want to do? What will I have fun doing? What will people be interested in watching? Things like that.
I'll say, because you made me just think of this. We're talking about the first session, like
don't tell us your backstory. Nobody cares.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that. You don't, in my opinion, you do not need an episode 0 that's 2 hours long telling everyone's in-depth backstory. But that's my personal.
See, I kind of like that. I like the idea of having an episode 0 that you can skip if you want.
I know you can, but in my opinion, a lot of people that have that episode 0 don't make it skip if you want because they will be like, oh, as you heard in our session 0, you're like, oh, I didn't listen to that. You should assume nobody did. In my opinion, but that's besides the fact. So I was going back to you're talking about, we did our first episode, and I not saying that I didn't have faith in this group. But I had told all of them, I was like, if we record this and we don't have a good group dynamic, we'll move on. If we record it, it's a little rocky and we want to redo it, I'll burn the whole thing and we'll do it again. You need to be, especially in the early stages, and at any point, you need to be ready to, there's like a phrase like, in writing, like, kill your babies. Like, just because.
Kill your darlings or kill your
your
babies.
darlings.
We try and say starlings.
Kill
Kill your
babies for podcasts.
I think if
You gotta sacrifice babies for podcast gods. That's what a lot of people. That's what they don't want you to know. All right.
That's the secret of our
Yeah.
moderate
That's the secret.
success.
Welcome to podcasting theories.
Look, Siddhartha Gaba didn't say a lot about podcasting, but he did say
but-
if you
but no-
meet the McElroys in the street, kill them.
Yeah, kill them and get their power. No, do not kill the. Do not kill the
no.
McElroys.
No,
I want
they're
their
nice boys.
Don't
I
We
want
like
their
them.
content to listen to. But I think you should be okay with yourself if you record, especially an early on episode. If you record it and you're just like, oh, we could have done it better. One person doesn't like this. Just be prepared to do that. And I think this is a good general rule for all tabletop role-playing games. There's a bunch of stuff on it, tabletop safety tools, which I know you can talk more about because you.
Yeah, KNS has a great PDF of different safety tools. Just sort of make sure everyone's on the same page. like not to get too dark with this, but there were certain topics, especially like sexual assault and stuff that are like pedophilia, will never come up in our show.
Yeah.
Like we just don't want to talk about it.
It's a
not
show
pleasant.
about teenagers. They do not have sex ever.
Or
right?
yeah.
Because they're teenagers. That's gross and weird, and we're not doing that.
But then in our show too, there's stuff like trauma or mental health issues, or there's a lot that we do go into. It's like
There's a lot of suicide talk.
well, yeah, but like it's sort of what is everyone's comfort level? Because some people don't want to play a game. Like Masks is designed to be like a happy, fun game. We play like a dark comedy body horror podcast. Not everyone wants to listen to it or do that. You really need to make sure everyone's on the same page so that someone doesn't have to come afterwards and be like, I come up to you afterwards and be like, that made me really comfortable. And because you could sort of get a feel for, like, hopefully you know people well enough to know what their comfort level is. Because like I said, sometimes it's fun to play around and darker stuff and kind of get humor out of that or catharsis from it. But some people would never want to play a game where like death or trauma was involved. And that's like our whole show, so.
Oh, yeah, episode 5 when the heads start blowing up. It's wild.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, sorry.
Yes, you there.
So I guess following up the question from my 3 associates here.
Yes.
So suppose now you've kind of established that identity. You know, you're kind of at the point, you're not only in your stride kind of experientially, but you've done the networking, you've bitten yourself to the point where you're sort of comfortable in your space. But from the perspective of, say, the long-term success of a project and something that can continue on indefinitely into the future, there's always the question of how do you handle the financial end of it. And so what are the sort of the legitimate, without being predatory, like the credible means of monetizing this creative product that you're creating, you know, that you're making, that's not going to anger your fans, but also allows the project to continue moving forward?
We use Patreon. That's our sole source of income. I mean, for like charity streams and stuff like that, sometimes we'll do giveaways or we would look for sponsors for that. For me personally, I do not like the idea of like people get really invested in your characters and they love your show and they really like what you're doing and then you're like, okay, buy a mattress or like do Blu-ray. But I just don't like those sorts of sponsorships without even getting into like actually predatory companies. It depends on where you want to draw that line. And some people will have like an exclusive Discord for fans or they'll have this or that. We have a fan run Discord. I left it because I was uncomfortable talking to fans all the time. And that I'm sure like if I was more like, oh my God, like I'm hanging out with you and we're like friends, you make more money. But I was like, I don't want people who listen to my show to feel like they know me when they can't possibly know me. That's a lot of my video essay work is about. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, that to me, it's your responsibility to kind of figure out where to draw the line.
I think also like the way our content works and the way that our dark anti-capitalist satire can come off, I cannot think of anyone who would sponsor us.
Yeah.
Except possibly the United States Postal Service because we talk about stamps a lot.
Yeah, like in episode 1, we were screaming ACAB.
Yeah, we're not.
They
Like,
are.
kick off.
It took no time. This podcast showed me 2 things. I am a very angry leftist, way more than I thought I was, which I'm not saying is bad. And then also, I love body horror. I did not realize those things about me until this podcast, and then
You had to have your love of body horror explained to you, and you're like, I like that's why I'm all freaked out about skin.
Yeah.
You learn a lot about yourself by doing a role-playing game podcast.
And that's also on you. It's like some people like they want to make their work apolitical. Like, or they don't want to get into that art because that can turn people away, but it can also get other people more into it. I have always been very political in my video essay work and when I panel. Like, you don't necessarily want to use it as a soapbox all the time, but I also would never censor myself. It just depends. But if you wanted corporate sponsors or if you wanted to be like family friendly, which we're not, those are all options.
This is also setting dependent, right? Like it is easier to. Social criticism is different in a high medieval, high fantasy setting than it is in a contemporary urban environment, right? Like ours takes place in now, roughly speaking, in a regular American-ish town.
Sometimes when people try to handle like racism in D&D, the way it's
like,
very clunky and
don't
weird.
touch it,
like,
dude. It's all very weird.
Oh, did you want to see if other people had questions?
Are there any other humans who would like to ask things?
Questions?
That's fine. We have other stuff to talk about.
Fine. Yeah. One question we did have, and it's kind of going back to a topic we had before, was from Alice. She plays on Unlabeled, which is another Mask AP podcast. It's a Mask AP of all trans women. You should check it out. It's really fun, and they're really early on into their show too. I think they're only about 6 or 7 episodes.
They really know. So
so
time
it's
to
pretty
catch
early.
up.
So they're like I said, Unlabeled. Go check them out. They're a lot of fun. But she had a question about like what are your tips on managing guests, both in reaching out to them and managing scheduling. Like so Shane was saying, a lot of our guests, we've been lucky enough to where we were friends with them beforehand or befriended them or, met them through that. But I think one of so this for me as a GM, the way I've done it, and once again, this sounds like, I'm not saying this is a brag, I'm a brag. Like I have been able to, as soon as I ask somebody that I want them to be a guest, they bring up to me about being a guest, I want them, I just tell them, because we're doing a superhero game, I'm like, cool. First question, do you want to be a superhero or supervillain? Second question, what do you want to do? Who are you? It's not a thing where it's like, I think there's been a few people that I had a specific character for them picked out because I was like, oh, I like playing with you. This is a role for you. But for the most part, every single one of our guests, I had no plans for them. I literally was like, what do you want to do? Who are you? And then they'll tell me, and then I've been like, and then I'll just like, oh shit, cool. I had this storyline. I can shoehorn into this, and I can like find a way to tie it in. And I have had all of our guests have had so much fun because literally they got to come on and do just whatever ridiculous thing they wanted to do. We had somebody who, Jack Packard, who's from Red Letter Media, he came on and played a character, and I was just like, what do you want to do? And he's just like, oh, I want to be kind of like indestructible Wolverine, but I have an old and shitty body. So it's like I can never die, but I'm also winded all the time, and I can't run or chase anyone down. And
Plays an assassin,
and so you're like an assassin, and so I was just like, all right, cool, let's make this work, and I found a way to do it. And so I think,
well, and the way this works is fun, like right, you to build your muscles, you tear them. If they can't be harmed, you stay the shape you've always been.
And for ours is a very specific thing. Superhero as a genre, you can get away with like, oh, I can say yes to anything, we can fit it in. But it really is just like, I think allowing, if you can get a guest to say yes, try to let them make of it as much as they want to make it their own, because they're going to feel comfortable. A good compliment we've gotten is a lot of the guest characters, if not all the guest characters we have on our main show, feel like they're coming in from their own story. Like people feel like it's like
a crossover episode,
where it's like, oh, well, there's a whole other podcast where Hoagie Allen, who like our friend Branson Reese plays, like there's a whole other podcast.
Oh, that'd be a sad show
for years, kind of thing. And it's literally just because I was like, what kind of character do you want to play? How stupid do you want to be? How serious do you want to be? That's gonna let them run wild. And I think that's why our guests have had so much fun, and that's why I think if people hear the guest episodes, they'll be like, oh shit, I want to try to get on that podcast. And as far as scheduling, just
that I have no idea
really
how you
hard.
do. That is
like you already played D&D. You know how to schedule a group of people. That's really hard.
Be as fun as possible. One tool that is very, very handy is called Doodle.com.
Like Sean introduced.
Yeah, Sean from Omencast.
Sean Oxspring.
Yes, introduced us to it. It's a thing. So whoever, like the GM or whoever wants to do it, can go in and you click dates. You can make it a whole day for hours at a time. And then you just be like, okay, here's all the dates I'm available to play this month. And then you send it to everybody, and they can click yes for which dates they can. And so then you're like, all right, cool. So on February 25th at 8 p.m., all of us are free. That's when we do it. And you just kind of got to be diligent about it. You got to be on top of it. Don't be pushy with your guests. Don't send them 1,000 messages.
Don't corner somebody. That's the thing.
Don't corner somebody. That's the thing. Like if they can say yes, just kind of tell them the heads up. Like for us, like our schedule kind of changes, but I can just tell people like we either do weeknights after 7 p.m. or we can do during the day or afternoon on Saturday or Sunday, whatever works best for you. And then you just kind of like, all right, what's the general timing? But scheduling is terrible for tabletop role-playing games. Scheduling for
it's awful.
Adding a stranger to that.
Yeah, adding a stranger to that, having to have equipment set up. It's awful. But
when there's like two British guys and then someone in Wisconsin and someone in LA.
Literally, that's the thing.
So we're in Atlanta.
Literally, right now, I have a session that I'm about to run for our bonus episode, Spider Day 2, the real story Spider Day. And like you're saying, like 2 people in GMT time, me in EST, 1 in MTN, and then one in Pacific.
DMT.
And 1 in DMT. Yeah, it's crazy. They're available at all times and none of the time at once. Like they're
actually always playing in your head. Great.
They're always playing. I'm trying to see for everything either. One thing. So this is more of just kind of a general kind of play question, but I think it kind of works. It was another. I think this is also from Tor. Yeah, this is from. We were talking about this. Well, we keep talking about Spider Day. So we've had a lot of guests on our main cast. But we've also, like I said, I've done I did a bonus episode called Spider Day where we had at least 32 player characters, all played by a different person, split across 9 different sessions that I edited into a 3.5 hour long episode. These 3 were part of it. And then one of the people on it, Tori, they played it and had always wanted to get into like tabletop design. They designed it's a 3-page, but a 1-pager RPG based on the Spider Day episode. That was a very fun thing, so that's just the question. But yeah, go check it out. We got zines of Spider Day 2. And then Day Ranolin is there at itch.io where you can download it. But so they had asked this. Where'd it go? Talking about failing forward because so.
The only way we know how to move forward.
For new GMs, maybe not super specific for podcasts, but failing forward, you have players who are legendary. This is directed to me. You, Joel, have players that are legendarily bad rollers. How do you keep the story moving when players roll so badly without making it seem forced or weird?
That is the story. Like, the failing is the story. I think that is something that, like, people, just experience in role-playing games, I think gets you, like, that's part of it. Like, you have to be, like, good. First of all, I do think that it helps to be good at, like, improvising and storytelling. What are we?
Don't focus on that, guys.
Oh my God.
There's a furry hand penetrating the boundary.
That's horrifying.
All right, so
just a little hand, like
just a furry hand, just waving.
Focusing up.
I can't.
Focusing up, team.
How am I supposed to focus with that happening?
So we're really big.
There it is again.
We're really big fans.
So yeah, I think that first of all, being good at like just like going along with things, like learning how to just like yes and just
it's also system based, right? Like D&D,
right.
You can die.
Yeah.
In Masks,
you can't die.
You wait, like the penalties are applied as conditions, which are basically emotional states, and you are knocked unconscious when you have too many feelings at once. Basically, it's like
That's how the game
so
works.
you don't die,
So
and like
great.
your ability, like the storyteller GM's ability to compensate for your failures, they can still give you what you wanted and what is necessary to make the story happen with consequences. And I think that this speaks to choosing the system, right? Your ability to our bad rolling would have gotten us killed in D&D.
Yeah.
We would have died 20 episodes ago.
But like personally for me, like I think that character death is also interesting.
Look,
like,
you guys
use
told me
that.
to not kill Jerry after episode 3. I was ready to do
Jerry.
it.
Worked so hard to get him to not kill his character.
Now you also don't want to kill Jerry and you like him now.
Yeah, I know. It's like me a lot that way. I didn't like me at first, and I made it through, and now I'm fine.
Yeah, but I do think, especially
also, don't do a lot of psychological bleed with your characters. It gives your GM too much power over you personally.
That's something real fast. We should I didn't know that bleed was like a concept, like in player safety. It's like if your emotional state or your traumas or whatever get involved with the character, it's like, oh, that's what we do. Oh no. Like it's sort of like how much of yourself are you willing to put out there? Like think about that before you do it. It's one thing if you're playing with your friends and it's like, oh, only your friends see it, but then like some stranger listens to the show and
now they know that my dad and I don't have like the best relationship.
Yeah.
I talk about it in stand up and elsewhere, so I'm not like that, and he doesn't really pay that much attention to my shit, so that's not important. But sorry for swearing. But if I did have a lot more, if I were more withdrawn about that, I would definitely have reset the way my character operates and not had nearly as many funny jokes about it.
Yeah, and everyone knows I hate my parents because I don't believe in metaphors, and I talk about how parents are terrible in the show all the time.
He says it like every episode.
Yeah, it's a pretty...
It's a pervasive.
Yeah.
Or you can. There were things that I deliberately put in to make. Like I'm a film critic, and my character doesn't watch movies. It's kind of funny, but it's also like a character who doesn't get any references to anything, or it's like there are things that I put in to distance myself, and then there are things that are like, oh, this is just me. But think about it. Like there are things that you don't think about when you're just playing with your friends. It's like you really should do a lot of preparation and only go into some stuff if make sure you're comfortable, make sure your players are comfortable. And I want to say too, I really like that Joel is a very flexible GM with stuff that he can roll with stuff. I hate being railroaded. I don't want someone that's like, you're little marionettes in my story that I'm telling. It's like, well,
You guys didn't go see the Baron, so I wasn't able to set up my giant quest.
Yeah. If you want to railroad people, go write a short story or a screenplay. Like,
put them in that and make them be actors.
So I think to speak on that, like I think of our show as a TV show. I don't necessarily think about it about running a tabletop game. I think about it episodically with what I will, we aim for 1.5 hours on each episode. So when we're recording and I see we're getting close to that, I'm constantly like, cool, where's the big lead? Where's the cliffhanger? What are we going to go off into? But I think especially going back to the question about like, what do you do whenever your players keep rolling bad? You want to continue the story. It's like you're saying, you can fail and still get what you wanted. You can, but think about TV shows and movies you watch. Nothing goes right. Everybody's like, here's the plan that we're going to do. Fast forward 30 minutes. Shit, we got the diamonds, but okay, Bill's dead. Okay, so what we got to pivot. And that's the whole thing. Like, if your characters are just doing great and never fail, your story sucks and it's boring. Do you know what?
No, Lord of the Rings. They go straight to Mordor. They toss the ring in. It's fine.
Well, it's the idea of like, of not to get too in depth, but like, Superman was great for comics in the beginning because it was like one of the first big heroes. And then Superman almost killed comics because people were like, oh, no, he can beat that. No, he can beat that. No, he can beat that. And you're just like, cool. What is the point of reading this? And so like you and then also everyone that's alive and that is like a character. We all have flaws. We all have weaknesses. And that's what makes a character history.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm perfect.
Speak for yourself.
Said the man with the suicide jokes.
We're really big fans of the Venture Brothers, and that was a very big influence on the show. Like we're queer leftists, so it's like there are certain things that are a little different, especially from the early seasons of that show. I've been rewatching.
There's any women in our show, so that's a starter.
That aren't voiced by men. We don't say certain slurs all the time. I love Venture Brothers, but it's like that show is about the like death of the dream of the '60s. It's about like horrible, neglectful parents. It's a show about trauma. Most of the characters are either very, very naive or they're horrible people. And it's like the bodyguard who kills people is a much better person than the person he's protecting. That's a lot of the show. And it's like, that is so much more interesting to me than it's like, oh, they go on adventures and they win every time. And it's like, I don't care. That's not.
Johnny Quest is terrible. Failure Johnny Quest is so much more fun.
Action Johnny, who's a heroin addict.
I think you can, so like Powered by the Apocalypse, one of the things I really like about the system, the base of every move, regardless of what it is, you like, you want to do this? Cool. You roll. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay, I can turn the volume down by half.
Yeah, we're recording this, so we have to use the microphone.
Yeah. You're fine.
Hi, we've been asked by the venue to shut the fuck up.
What was it?
What time do we go till?
We're to wrap up. Like
okay.
we have.
Are we? Okay.
These people look like they've learned enough from us.
Yeah. Oh no, because so what I was about to say is like Powered by the Apocalypse itself. You roll 2d6. You can get 3 results: failure, mixed success, or full success. And it's a really fun thing to be able to play with. You can still give somebody an objective they wanted with the failure. It's just kind of a worse outcome that comes with it. And one of our questions, we had a fan, Tucker, who also asked about, we mainly focus on Powered by the Apocalypse, but like, do we think that stuff can be converted to D&D? And I do think that, because I think if you want to.
Sure, all this is made up. You can do whatever you want.
Tales is a good example.
Tales
of Magic.
What's the idea of like, when you get a critical, you do it times 10. But in my opinion, you're like, oh, okay, well, your DC is 15, you only get a 16. Well, it's kind of a mixed success. You didn't do it perfectly, so it's like, yeah, you steal the dude's thing, but like now there's coins falling out of his purse, and he's about to notice that somebody did that. And like, I think that really helps with the narrative. And it's not like a thing of like not allowing your players to be successful, but like I said, it's just D&D is a very, if you use it the base, it's like a did I hit, yes or no. But the idea of being like, did I hit? Yes, but is a really interesting.
Or as they say, yes and.
Yes and.
I'm in the no but school.
It's a very fun like kind of narrative tool, and I as like the game master who runs it am just having so much fun being able to like allow y'all to fail while still succeeding and kind of moving forward. And that's why me personally, whenever I first brought it up, I was saying I want this to be a Powered by the Apocalypse game for that, because I want it to be super open-ended on
itself really well to implement.
I want to be able to push that. And like I said, so like there's a running gag amongst our fans of how bad these 3 people are at rolling 2d6s. There's statistically more failures.
He said we're not a reverse Travis McElroy who faked his rolls on the Adventure Zone for a long time.
Yeah,
we're not faking it.
Okay, no, like that's a real, like that is a very real topic, right? Like that he was pushing his roles and admittedly did so to push the story speaks to his distrust of the GM to actually accommodate the story and the interest of the audience in him failing. Because I would way rather watch them eat it than just, we power up and win the game.
Magnus rushes in and rolls another 18.
Surprise.
Really? You don't say.
But yeah, so but that's what I'm saying. Like, just to roll with like the failing forward stuff. Like, don't think it's kind of like I was talking about earlier. Like, the first couple of web series I made were awful. They were bad, but it is real life. They were awful and bad, and I learned from them, and I got better. And so it's the same kind of idea within your story. Of even in D&D, if somebody lows below the DC and they don't fully get it, you can still give them a little bit. You can set, and that's why the DC level and Dungeons and Dragons
they can
is
still
adjusted.
make the jump. They just drop their bag.
Yeah, and so and it adds a little extra flavor. And
now
then,
I gotta go get my bag.
And then also,
I just don't have my gear now, and that's the rest of the campaign.
And this kind of goes back to what we're talking about, where everyone's on the same page. Your players should feel comfortable to tell you as the game master that I don't like that choice. Redo it, because this has happened. Luckily, it's only happened a few times, but y'all have been like, I don't like that. I don't think that's what would happen. And then I'm like, cool, give me a second. Okay, we're going to go back to this
It's never like, I don't want to fail. It's, I don't think my character would do that. Can we do something slightly different? And it's, you have to have that communication, and we don't try to railroad you, and you don't, like a mutual respect and communication.
And and then we don't really do it for the main show itself, but then we've had bonus episodes where I've told them like, all right, so the finale of this, I need y'all to get to this point. This is how this episode is going to end. I do not care how you get to D, but you can.
Those are some of the most fun.
You can pick A, B, and C, but this is what D is definitely. This is where we end at, and y'all are really good. And like I said, it's because we've been working together for a year. We all understand collaborative storytelling, and we're trying to make sure that everyone gets it. And that's another thing too. Like, if you're a game master and one of your players is really hogging the attention and the narrative, like, it is your responsibility as the game master to not necessarily call them out during the game, but just be like, hey, like,
send them a message and be like, hey, can I
there's
talk to you?
3 people at this table. You are taking 60% of the time. Like, you got to give it up, because people have storylines. Other people will do that.
I just want to say, when you salted my lawn with that really well thought out letter on this topic, the detail work was amazing.
It's just so important to trust your GM and to trust your players, and like make sure that, because the thing is, it's like not everything's going to go perfectly. You're not always going to be totally comfortable 100% of the time. And the thing is, it's like, it's important to say like, oh, hey, like having like safety tools in place, or saying like, hey, like feeling comfortable enough with each other to call
can we
each
cut
other
that
out.
joke? I don't really feel comfortable about it. We don't do it a lot because we're all on the same wavelength, but I do feel comfortable. Like, hey, Joel, can you cut that line? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, I said a word I definitely don't feel comfortable. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, just be like, play with cool people, play with people that you like, and people who
don't
play
with
suck.
People.
Like play with chill people.
If you're afraid to ask something like that, or if you're not comfortable, it's like,
why are you playing? Are you friends?
All right, so we're close to wrapping up. Is there any other questions of anybody? All of our
hundreds of people.
Oh,
here.
Excuse me, you there, the dozen men in the golf cow.
Yeah. Thank y'all. Yeah, like I said,
thank you.
I with the help of other people, I've been wanting to start a like GM podcasting like kind of advice called Critical Tips. Who
do you get it?
Where can I come up with this name?
Starting a podcast called Critical Pits. That's not a joke. Anyway.
Yeah. And I've been wanting to do this, and I was really happy to be able to do this panel. But like I said, like I love storytelling. I really do have fun with the production and the editing of it and stuff. And so like, thank y'all for coming to the panel. If you haven't checked out our podcast, like I said, it's called Critical Bits.
We have signs, we have buttons, and all kinds of stuff.
We can also hang out for a second and answer any other questions.
Afterwards, like I said, check us out at Critical Bitcast, and if you want to check out, we have a bonus bonus like little 6-episode series we did called
Monster
Seasons,
of the Week,
where I ran Monster of the Week, and I took 16 players, split them up between 4 groups, and ran 13 sessions in total. And cut it up into a.
So if you'd like an easy to digest primer for our regular show, here's a very convoluted, very long thing.
It's a non-linear narrative story with crossovers and an epic.
It's just super cool.
Finale.
Listen to it.
There's also Shannon put up a video of the first episode. With like it just like
an animatic
like Persona style,
like a visual novel style animatic.
Yeah.
Sort of help people.
Yeah, so check it out. So but once again, I'm the GM and editor of Critical Bits, Joel Ruiz.
Oh, I'm Paul Byron. I'm on the show.
I'm Shannon Strucci. You can find me on YouTube at Strucci Movies. I also do Scanline with H Bomber Guy. I'm on Struggle Session. I do a lot of other. We do conventions together. I do conventions separately. Do a bunch of stuff.
I'm Shelby. I'm on Critical Bits, and I'm also I'm starting a Riverdale podcast with Joel, and that's my true passion.
Called
This
Jingle
is all
Jangle.
just the thing is, it's like do another here's my podcast advice: do another podcast as a stepping stone to the true podcast that you want to do, which is Jingle Jangle 420 on Twitter.
Yeah,
it's coming this summer.
Actually, and one last piece: engage with your fans. Ask them to draw stuff. They want to draw your things. Commission artists. We did Sacktober, which was my dumb idea to mock Inktober and just set up.
Sad Sack. He's got a.
The character has a paper bag for a head. It's a very straightforward and easy thing to draw, so people do. Hey, this is a smart merchandise platform. But that being said, we threw this out there, and then dozens of people drew 30 sad sacks, and then we made a huge episode about it, and it became a huge engagement tool and drew other people in.
It's fun.
And like gave us a lot of encouragement and fun because people like this thing. It's great.
This is a separate thing that Shannon has videos on and could do whole panels on. Engage with the fans, but keep it at a respectable boundaries for both you and the fans. But like I said, it's a whole other thing. Hopefully, Fake Friends 2 will be back.
I did a 2-hour documentary that got taken down for copyright. That I'm still working on.
Once again, these are all other fun things. But thank you everyone for coming out so much.
Yeah.